Welcome back, coaches. Day 4 of our week-long marathon into how to use mental performance as a coach to optimize your coaching. Remember, day 1, we looked at how to get your athletes to listen, retain, and execute the information you're giving them. And we recognized that was predominantly to do with a misalignment in values. Day 2, we looked at underperforming athletes. And we recognized the solution there was to empower the athlete to control their journey. So they have more control over their exercises, their process, and their performance. Day 3, yesterday, we looked at motivation and how to create an environment of motivation, and that was little and often recognition. Today, we're going to talk about a really curly subject, and that is, as a coach, we're very time poor. So do we focus on the development of our team and our team culture, or do we focus on the development of our individual athletes? And this was raised often enough to be in our top 5 and addressed this week. So the answer to this one is it's a chicken and the egg thing. And I know that doesn't answer the question for you straight away, but hear me out. When I'm coaching and I get called in and a coach is struggling to manage all the expectations, they're struggling to not only get the results for the club and the organization, so essentially that they can keep their job, but they're also struggling to optimize the journey for the athletes. And I see coaches way too frequently ping-ponging back and forth between the two, focusing on the team, so focusing on the dynamic of everybody in the club, and then coming back and trying to help an individual athlete. And I get it. As a coach, we're people, and we're trying to get in there, and our fundamental drive is to build young athletes. So we want to invest our time, effort, and our focus into helping that individual athlete thrive. Sometimes that comes at the cost and the consequence of the team dynamic. Then we get put under a load of pressure to ensure that the team is working, the environment is working, that we're getting enough athletes come through there. And sometimes that's a financial driver. So these two tend to be at odds with each other. My ethos is slightly different. When I walk into any kind of environment, the first thing I look at and say, is the environment conducive of the athlete being able to thrive? And if it's predominantly a individual athlete focused environment, then the answer to that is often no. And a coach has tended to put all their eggs in one basket. They're trying to get bang for buck. And look, this is a frequent focus for coaches when they've been underperforming. If a coach or a club has been underperforming, then what they're looking for is to turn that around. And sometimes that focus gets put on the athlete. Yes, the athlete benefits from the extra attention, but they also get the extra pressure that comes with that too. So the analogy I use is like going gardening. For me, when I look at a club, I see that as the garden, as the bed to make sure that the garden and the soil is at its optimal. And the athlete is what we choose to plant. It's got to be able to grow. It doesn't matter what we plant. If it's an environment that isn't going to allow it to thrive, then it's going to either die off as an athlete or go somewhere else and look for somebody else to help them. So our primary focus as a coach, I believe, is to create the right environment for an athlete to thrive. So you do that by creating a DNA. What's the DNA of our organization? How do we do what we do? What do we stand for? When an athlete or a coach comes and they are operating in our environment, how well do they know what we do? If that's constantly changing, if you're constantly reacting to the pressure and that's changing, then it's like having a soil that's constantly changing its pH. You put something in, it starts to grow, and then all of a sudden it dies off, and you can't understand why. It's because you've changed the construct of how that garden bed is feeding that plant. So it's the same thing as a club. When we look at our clubs, we've got to look at it like a garden bed. Is it the right environment? Is it fit for purpose? And we've got to look at you as a coach and go, how do I coach? There's no point in creating an environment for those athletes to thrive in if you don't. If you're going to work each day and it's killing you off, then the reality is you're going to leave. You're going to go somewhere else, or you're going to give up the sport. Somebody else is going to come in and then re-renovate the whole thing anyway. So it's got to be a collaborative environment, both for you as a coach and for those athletes. So that's step number one. When you do that and you create this DNA, this place, this framework that is designed specifically to fit you and the culture of your way that you coach and the way you want to raise that club, then you can start focusing and tending to the individual athletes. That's like planting those plants inside that soil. You're going to go along, you're going to nurse those plants, you're going to do what you need to do to make them grow and thrive and make them strong. So there's a time and a place for both. When I'm looking at an organization, if they're already set up, they're already in flow and they're working, then every 6 months to 12 months, we'll recalibrate. We'll look at that and go, is this working? Is it fit for purpose? Does our DNA represent the way that we want to perform? If it doesn't, then that's the time to get in and till the soil. Make sure that it's as nutrient rich as possible. If it's the right kind of environment and we've assessed that and we've made any kind of calibrations we need to do, then we need to look at the athletes. And I tend to look at the athletes and recalibrate the athlete program, their interaction, the way that they're interacting with that club dynamic every month. So we have a coaches group that comes together and we'll look at the athlete development every month. And what it should do, it should be in really good stead with the DNA of the club. There needs to be this congruency between the athlete and the way that they're doing what they're doing and the environment, the club, the way that it's operating. Then as a coach, you get to pick and choose. If you're only focusing on the structure and the framework of the club every 6 to 12 months, then you can put all of that energy and that focus either into the individual athlete or the collective of those athletes. And it's like, I always talk about spinning plates. I'm old enough to remember on TV when there's people come out and on canes would be spinning plates. And as they spin a plate, you look at it and go, if they don't spin it right, it's going to fall, it's going to crash. Coaching is very similar. We've got to make sure all the plates are being spun at the same time in the same sequence. So looking after individual athletes when your focus is on them at that point, because the environment is right, means that you can utilize your focus as a coach in a really efficient and effective way. Last part to this is making sure that you are one of those plates to be spun to. So as a coach, you've got to make sure that, yes, you fit in that environment, but also when you're paying attention to your athletes, you've got to be paying attention to yourself too. You've got to be making sure that everything is cohesive with you and congruent with you in the way that you do what you do. So if you came along today expecting me to say pick one or pick the other one, let you down there, didn't I? So it's more about creating the right environment so you can be really specific as a coach to optimize your coaching. So who do you pick? Do you pick the team or do you pick the individual? It depends. It depends on where you are in the cycle. It depends where you are in your yearly program. Hope that helped, and I hope that is a different perspective on how you as a coach can optimize yourself, your coaching philosophy, and your focus, your focal currency, where you spend in your focus. A quick shout out to the coaches that have reached out over the last 3 days and shared with me the challenges they've been having off the back of these conversations we've been sharing each day. Really appreciate the feedback from you guys. Really appreciate the fact that you're listening and it's encouraging you to think about your coaching slightly differently. Keep those messages coming in. I'm enjoying interacting with you. Don't forget, on this Sunday, we will be going live for 45 minutes, answering all your questions, whether it be the ones that we've focused on this week. You might want to ask some questions about coaches, the team versus coaching the individual. or any other questions you've got around coaching, your efficiency, your effectiveness, and how good you can be as a coach. So make sure you register at smartmind.com/coach for this Sunday. And until tomorrow, we're going to be focusing on you as a coach and how do you build credibility if your athletes are already achieving more than you ever did as an athlete. That's a really tough one. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for day 5, our last of our free videos this week. So tune in tomorrow and same time, same place. See you there. Have a good day.